While gaming can be a fun hobby on many different platforms, the controller you're using is extremely important too. And in today's video I want to talk about the top 10 video game controllers made by their respective first-party manufacturers. Before I begin, I want to mention that since I have not tested either the PS5's DualSense or Xbox Series X controller, which I've heard are really good too, are not going to be mentioned in this list. With that said, hello guys, my name is Hepodix and I hope you enjoy the video. Let's start the list with the Nintendo Wii's Wii Remote, or better known as the Wiimote. Wiimote features motion sensing where you can move or waggle it to different directions or do different types of action to do commands in game. There are also several buttons to use, as well as inbuilt speaker/microphone, and the Wii Motion Plus accessory, later integrated the newer Wiimote models, also help with more complex motions. There are other accessories hooked to Wiimote's bottom, the most known being the nunchuck, which allows for better gameplay experience in some games. You can also use Wiimote sideways to play classic games like the original Super Mario Bros. That works pretty well. Whether you play games that require the motion technology or not, the Wiimote is still pretty nice and easy to use controller, and therefore it takes the 10th spot in this list. For the number 9 spot, let's talk about the Xbox Adaptive Controller, which in my opinion is a greatly designed controller for people with disabilities. It features two large dome buttons that can be mapped to do any function within Xbox, as well as huge D-pad, menu, view, and Xbox home buttons. At the back of this controller there are 19 3.5mm jacks, where you can connect additional buttons that corresponds to a different button each, such as the trigger, bumper, or D-pad buttons. As a concept, this might sound pretty weird, but for people with disabilities, it's a great execution nonetheless. Adaptive Controller is not hardware locked to Xbox either, and it was developed with the intention to be used on other platforms, which is really nice, and therefore it takes the 9th spot in this list. At number 8 spot, let's talk about the Super Nintendo Gamepad, the best classic controller in my opinion that does not use analog sticks. It features 4 face buttons on the right, A, B, X and Y, in the middle, start and select, as well as a D-pad on the left and 2 shoulder buttons. Like the aforementioned Wiimote, it might sound kinda primitive today, but the Super Nintendo Gamepad is really great controller to play classic games with, and it's really comfortable to use, so therefore it takes the 8th spot in this list. Next at number 7 spot, we have the Wii U Pro Controller, which is really underrated in my opinion. It features the traditional face buttons, D-pad and analog sticks, as well as power, home, bumper and digital triggers. It breaks some tradition with the right analog being positioned in the top right instead of bottom right, which is okay, and the Wii U Pro Controller is also very comfortable to use, hence taking the 7th spot in this list. For the number 6 spot, let's talk about the PlayStation 2's DualShock 2 controller, which brings a ton of memories to me. The DualShock 2 is a classic no doubt that features 2 analog sticks, pressure-sensitive D-pad, X, square, circle, triangle, and L1, L2, R1 and R2 buttons, as well as digital start, select, L3 and R3 buttons. The design compared to the original DualShock is pretty much the same, but DualShock 2 is more lighter and most buttons are pressure sensitive, while the original version lacks this. It's a nice controller to use overall, therefore taking the 6th spot in this list. At the number 5 spot, we have the Xbox wireless controller that came out with few revisions through the course of time, but is still a great controller nonetheless. It has a digital D-pad, 2 analog triggers LT and RT, 2 shoulder buttons LB and RB, 2 clickable analog sticks, wireless pairing button, as well as 7 digital buttons A, B, X, Y, menu, view and Xbox home. You can also hook up 3.5mm headphones to this controller, besides the 2013 model that had its own weird input. While the Xbox 360's controller is also great, the Xbox One controller, dubbed the Xbox Wireless controller, is even better, but since I have not tested the Series X variant, it is difficult for me to talk about that one, although I've heard it's also pretty great, so therefore the Xbox One Wireless controller takes the 5th spot in this list. Moving to the 4th spot, we have the DualShock 4 controller, which took a huge step up from its predecessors, especially the DualShock 3. The DualShock 4 features 6-axis motion sensing, 2 analog sticks and triggers, a digital D-pad and 12 digital buttons, as the newcomers are the PS, Share and Options buttons instead of Start and Select, as well as 2-point capacitive touchpad in the middle. It also features a mono speaker, similar to the Wii Remote, as well as 3.5mm stereo headset jack and an extension port, which are great additions too. The DualShock 4 is also very comfortable to use, and like I mentioned in the intro, I have not tested the PS5's DualSense controller, so it's difficult for me to talk about that, although I've heard it's pretty good, but for now the DualShock 4 takes the 4th spot in my list. At number 3 spot, we have the Switch Pro controller, which I really enjoy to use, and the layout is very similar to the Xbox Wireless controller, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. The Switch Pro controller has 2 analog sticks, an accelerometer, gyroscope, digital D-pad, 10 digital face buttons, as well as 2 digital shoulder buttons and triggers. It also supports the near-field communication to use Nintendo's amiibos, as well as an HD rumble and motion controls. The lack of headphone jack is a bit of a minus for an 8th generation controller, but the Switch Pro controller is still pretty comfortable, the buttons feel great, and therefore it takes the 3rd spot in this list. Next, at number 2 spot, we have the GameCube controller, which is very likely an unpopular opinion to have this one so high in this list, but I just love the GameCube controller and its overall execution. It features 2 analog sticks, 2 hybrid analog triggers / digital buttons, 6 digital buttons A, B, X, Y, Z and Start, as well as digital D-pad. The right analog stick, known as the C stick, is smaller compared to the left analog stick, which is fine, but the D-pad feels a bit janky, and the lack of 2 bumpers is a bit of a minus too, although the Z button takes place within the typical placement of the right bumper. Even despite that, it's still an excellent controller to use, and is even supported to this very day, majorly thanks to the Super Smash Bros. Community, as even the latest installment of Smash, Ultimate, even supports the GameCube controller, which is very cool, and therefore it takes the 2nd spot in my list. At number 1 spot, we have another unpopular opinion, as I think the best controller is absolutely the original Xbox controller, known as the Duke. Wait, what? Are you serious? No, I'm not, but I couldn't resist myself with this one. Sorry, folks. Okay, so the real top spot goes to the Xbox Elite 2 controller, an enhanced version from the original Elite controller, which is quite expensive but still top tier nonetheless. On first glance, it might look like the Xbox Wireless controller, but the catch is that it features a steel construction with a soft touch plastic exterior, along with interchangeable rear paddle buttons, analog stick tops, different D-pad designs, as well as hair trigger locks. The Elite 2 amps up features a bit, as it has other hardware improvements, such as level 3 hair trigger locks, adjustable tension for thumbsticks, revised rubber grips, an extra user-defined profile setting added, as well as Bluetooth connectivity. On top of being comfortable controller, the reason the Xbox Elite 2 controller takes the top spot is the variety. There are just so many customizable options for it, meaning that the player can choose which buttons they want to use, which is really great, and therefore it has to take the 1st spot in my list. Okay, so that concludes the top 10 video game controllers list. If you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up as it helps me to grow, subscribe to my channel and hit the notification bell for more awesome gaming related top 10 videos to come. Also, let me know your favorite controller in the comments below, and with all that said, thanks for watching, my name is Hepodix and have a nice day.